I've cleaned away the rusted material here, and now you can see a series of spot welds where the pan was welded to the subframe, as well as over here. Right here I can stick my finger right through the floor under the car. They can actually feel the brake lines there. So I don't know whether one of the spot welds was too deep or it rusted from the top or the bottom, but anyway, it looks like that contributed to this mess right here. The subframe here has some rust spots on the inside, but the metal isn't pitted very bad. Over here the floor pan has some pretty severe pitting. I've continued here with a grinder using various tips trying to get into the areas here. Got it pretty well cleaned up. I took a light underneath to inspect it. I found a few pinholes here. The metal otherwise was solid, and it's kind of hard to see here, but there's a lot of curve and contours here. It would have been very hard to use a piece of fill metal, and otherwise, like I said, it was fairly decent. So what I did is I just took a MIG welder here and then filled in those little spots. I've been able to further prepare the area using a cutoff wheel, grinder, sandpaper. I would weld a new piece in, but looking at the subframe here, anything I try to spot weld to this is going to create a void here, and the weld will burn the paint off, and it'll just probably re-rust and blister again. If it had been in an open area here, I'd probably just weld a new piece in. So in this case, I'm going to oversize the template here and then lay a new piece in on top and then probably rivet it down. Since we're going to pop rivet a panel in place, the next step is to thoroughly clean the whole area and then paint it probably twice, if not 3 coats, to ensure that all this metal here is sealed against all the harsh elements that it'll encounter. That includes working in these subframe pockets up here, taking a shot back, sucking that out, maybe even using a jet of solvent in there to kind of flush all that stuff away. Over here where the sound ending was, there was some glue, so we would definitely want to make sure that's all away. And especially treat the insides of this subframe. Because of where the panel was, part of the fuel line here is exposed, so we're going to paint the top of that as far as we can reach. And then the key is once we have this all painted and cured, we'll put our panel into place and then paint everything again where the pop rivets are to help seal that, prevent anything from wicking up down below. Finishing up the third coat, the first 2 were gray and the last coat's black. That provides a good contrast so you can make sure that you get full coverage over all the surfaces. With the surfaces painted, just making any final adjustments before we pop rivet the panel in place. I went ahead and primed the edge here so that way when we put our pop rivets in, we try to avoid as much metal to metal contact as we can. On the bottom here, I went ahead and finished it, and then I've also sanded both edges here so that way when we use our epoxy, it'll attach better. If it was unsanded, it'd take a chance of it popping apart and then allowing water in. We want to make sure that this is sealed as good as we can, prevent any metal to metal contact. I've also taken a piece of scrap here and then verified how our pop rivets are going to work. In this case, I have to use 2 different stem lengths. I have a short pop rivet, which we'll use here on the edges for the sheet metal to sheet metal. Here on the subframe, it's a little thicker metal, so I have a longer stem pop rivet, which will allow us to go down through the sheet metal on the subframe here and pull this together. At this point, I've set the patch panel into place and started to index where the holes are. Then I've also marked where the subframe is so I can index holes off of that. And then I check to make sure we don't have any seams or creases. Basically, you don't want to drill a pop rivet right into a corner. You want to make sure it's a nice flat spot. So we'll have to adjust some of the holes based off of the way the floor pan here is bent. Then I went ahead and drilled the first hole, and then I just took one of the long pop rivets and set it into place to hold the panel. Then I went to the opposite corner, drilled a hole, and just set one of these long pop rivets into place, and then I'll continue to do so as I work my way around the panel. That way it keeps the panel from moving and keeps the holes indexed right. Then when we get all the holes drilled, we'll just pull all these back out and then lift the patch panel out, sweep up all the metal shavings and dust and everything under it. I've set all the pop rivets, and you can see I have 2 rectangular boxes and then nothing here in this middle span. The way this patch is set up, it's right over the subframe, and there's a metal tube in there, and there's not enough depth to be able to set these pop rivets. The good news is it's internal here to the vehicle, so I don't have to worry about any water or anything getting up under that. So I'll be able to just set these ends. Now I'm going to pull these pop rivets back out. Finalizing preparation, making sure all the holes are where they're supposed to be. And I'm deburring both here and the panel. And then I'll go through and sweep this all out and then wipe it down. Now that everything's clean, I've put the panel back into place and resetting the pop rivets here to check everything. I did end up re-drilling one of the holes because I found where it was at was in a bad spot where there was a seam. So I didn't think it was strong enough, so I ended up moving it beside it. So once I get that and verify that the fitment's good, I'll pull everything back, give it another wipe down. I've mixed and set the epoxy, noting any areas that there was a transition in the metal to fill those, and then I've slowly smoothed it out to prevent any air pockets from getting in here. That way you won't trap any moisture. The other thing is you want to make sure you use steel pop rivets. If you use aluminum, anywhere that they touch steel, they'll start to corrode. So I'm going to go ahead and put our patch panel into place here, and then reset all the pop rivets to make sure they fit, and then start crimping our steel pop rivets. At this point I've popped all the rivets. Given the contour of where you're patching, you may have to adjust the order in which you pop the rivets. Try to pop the high spots first, try to seat it into place, and then if there's any depressions next to those high spots, then I usually work at those, trying to keep it so it pulls itself down the best it can. If you applied the epoxy right, you should see it kind of squished out all the way around. So you can see where the patch panel is here. When I put the panel in, the epoxy oozed out, and I was able to smooth that. Got a really good seal here. After letting it dry, I sanded the whole thing again, and then applied 3 coats of finish, paying careful attention to seal around these drain plugs or anything else down here to keep any water or contamination from wicking back up into the bottom of the floor pan. Same thing on the top. Once the epoxy cured, sanded around the edges here, and then put the 3 coats on, transitioning out into the floor pan, make sure I have a really good seal. Also went back and in these frame rail access areas touched up anything, make sure those were all sealed. Where this patch is, I'm probably going to put sound dampening back up to the edge here, and I'll leave this area open, probably just put some encapsulated foam over it for now, so that way I can come back and inspect and make sure that there's no rust blistering or anything down the road. And with that, I'm ready to put the interior back in.